The galaxy had been at war for centuries, with countless alien factions fighting for control of the stars. From the ancient Vath to the mighty Zalrin, each race believed their civilization was destined to rule. As time passed, the galactic war only seemed to grow. Worlds burned, civilizations fell, and peace remained a distant dream. Among all this chaos, Earth, humanity's home, stood silent. For years, humans had watched from the sidelines. The galaxy's most powerful races dismissed Earth as a primitive world, too young and too weak to play any part in their endless struggles. Even Earth's most advanced ships and technology were nowhere near the strength of the galactic powers. The humans were content to remain neutral, focusing on their own survival and growth. They had no interest in the galactic battles that raged beyond their world. At least, that was the belief of everyone else. However, things were changing. The humans had been watching, learning, and building. Earth had spent years secretly developing their fleet. No one had noticed the subtle rise in their power. The galaxy's leaders thought the human race was far too weak to make a difference. They mocked the idea of humans entering the war. They were convinced humanity was no threat. But then came the message. One day, without warning, a signal pierced through the quiet of space. It was from Earth. No one had expected it. No one knew who sent it or why. The message was simple yet powerful. The time of silence is over. Prepare for the consequences. Humanity enters the war. The alien races laughed at the idea. What can they do? They asked. They are nothing but children in the vastness of space. But there was something about the message that made them uneasy. The humans had been quiet for so long, and now they were speaking up. What did they mean by consequences? What did they mean by entering the war? The galaxy's leaders pushed the thoughts aside. After all, what could a single small planet do against the combined might of galactic empires? Still, a seed of doubt had been planted. Slowly, whispers spread across the stars. Some began to question whether humanity had been lying in wait, quietly watching, readying themselves for something more. Others scoffed, dismissing it as nothing more than a foolish threat. But deep down, all the galaxy's leaders knew one thing: the humans were no longer staying silent. They were about to make their move. As the weeks passed, every eye in the galaxy turned to Earth. Tension grew. The silence was over, and no one knew what would happen next. For years, the galaxy had underestimated humanity. Earth was just another backwater planet, ignored by the great empires that ruled the stars. The idea that humans could influence the galaxy was laughable. Yet, as the message sent from Earth spread across the galaxy, something began to stir. Some alien leaders dismissed it as a joke, while others began to feel uneasy. The question lingered. What if the humans were truly ready to enter the war? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A fleet of ships emerged from deep space. At first, no one believed it. How could a tiny, insignificant planet suddenly send a fleet into the galaxy? But as the human ships moved closer, the reality became undeniable. The fleet was real, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The ships gleamed with advanced technology, sleek and powerful. They were designed for one thing: war. The first alien race to encounter the human fleet was the Kar, a race known for their brutal conquests. They were confident that no one could stand against them. But as they faced the humans, that confidence began to waver. The humans didn't negotiate. They didn't plead for peace. Instead, they fought with cold efficiency. The Kar were unprepared for the speed and precision of the human forces. The human ships struck fast and hard, cutting through the Kar defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Kar, stunned by the ferocity of the attack, tried to fight back, but they were outmatched. It wasn't just their technology that surprised the Kar. It was the humans' will to fight. They didn't hesitate. They didn't fear death. And they didn't show mercy. The first battle was over in a matter of hours. The Kar fleet, once thought to be unbeatable, was forced to retreat. The humans had claimed their first victory. But the real shock came afterward. The message the humans sent was not one of destruction. It was an ultimatum. Join us, or face extinction. The galaxy's most powerful races were now faced with a choice: accept humanity as a new force in the galaxy, or fight them. Some laughed at the idea, thinking the humans were bluffing. But others, more cautious, began to wonder if they were making a mistake. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy had underestimated them for far too long, and now it was clear that Earth was not to be ignored. The old powers of the galaxy began to feel a shift in the balance. What had been a distant thought, could humanity be a threat, was now a terrifying reality. The silence that had surrounded Earth for so many years was gone. Humanity had awoken, and the war had just begun. The news of humanity's first victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Kar, once thought to be the most powerful empire, had been struck down by a force no one saw coming. The galaxy was now on edge. What followed was a tense silence. The question on everyone's mind was the same: what would humanity do next? On the edge of known space, the humans had made their next move. A fleet, larger than the first, arrived at the border of the Zalran coalition, one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. The Zalran were known for their advanced warships and their ruthless tactics. They had seen countless empires come and go, and they believed nothing could challenge their strength. But humanity wasn't like anything the Zalran had faced before. The human fleet arrived without warning. The first Zalran ships to encounter the humans were left in shock. The humans didn't send a message asking for peace or negotiating terms. They simply attacked, sending a shockwave through the Zalran fleet with their advanced weaponry. The Zalran ships tried to fight back, but the humans' weapons were faster, more powerful, and more precise. The human ships didn't engage in long, drawn-out battles. Instead, they struck quickly, targeting weak points in the Zalran defenses. Within hours, the Zalran fleet was in disarray. The humans had already secured victory in their first battle with the Zalran. For the first time in centuries, the Zalran were on the back foot. Their leaders, once arrogant and dismissive of humanity, now faced the harsh reality that Earth's fleet was more powerful than they had ever imagined. The human fleet didn't just win battles, they shattered the very image the galaxy had of them. No longer were humans the helpless species, hidden away on a remote planet. They were warriors. The Zalran Council, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, quickly called for a meeting. They had to respond. A delegation was sent to negotiate with the humans, but the message they received was clear. There would be no talks, only terms. The humans were demanding something the Zalran had never been asked before: surrender. The humans were not interested in alliances or peace. They wanted a victory that would shake the galaxy to its core, forcing every race to recognize them as a power in their own right. The Zalran could only watch in stunned silence as the humans prepared for the next phase of their campaign. The fleet was not slowing down. It was moving with purpose, heading toward the heart of the Zalran coalition. The human message was simple and unmistakable: you can join us, or you can be swept aside. The galaxy was now faced with a new reality. Humanity had arrived, and they were not asking for permission. They were taking what they wanted. For every race that had dismissed them as weak and insignificant, this was the moment they realized how wrong they had been. The galaxy was changing, and no one could ignore it. The Zalran coalition had barely managed to escape the humans' grasp, their once proud fleet now battered and broken. The humans had made their intentions clear. They were not here to play the same old games. They were here to dominate. As their fleet continued to advance, whispers began to spread through the galaxy. Some races, who had once ruled without challenge, were starting to feel the heat of humanity's rise. The Kar, still reeling from their defeat at the hands of the humans, were the first to organize a resistance. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were determined to ensure they wouldn't make that mistake again. The Kar called on their allies, the Vath and the Drulgar, to join them in a new alliance, a united front to push back against the human threat. Together, they formed a coalition, hoping to stop the unstoppable. The galaxy had seen nothing like this before. Three of the most powerful and ruthless empires now joined forces, ready to wage war against a single enemy. The Kar, Vath, and Drulgar were convinced that humanity's rapid rise had been a fluke, that their technology was still too new to face the combined might of their armies. They couldn't have been more wrong. The human fleet, now fully mobilized and battle-hardened, wasn't just powerful, it was unpredictable. Each battle fought so far had shown the galaxy that the humans were quick learners. They adapted faster than any alien race could have imagined. Their strategy was simple but effective. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't give the enemy time to think. In the first battle against the newly formed coalition, the humans did not hesitate. As the Kar, Vath, and Drulgar fleets gathered in the outskirts of human space, ready to strike, the humans struck first. They didn't wait for the enemy to make the first move. They broke the silence with an explosion of firepower, catching the coalition off guard. The Kar, once thought to be invincible, now found themselves retreating in disarray. The Vath and Drulgar were no better. Their ships were destroyed before they even had a chance to organize a proper defense. For hours, the battle raged, but by the end of it, the humans stood victorious. Their fleets, though not without losses, had devastated the combined forces of three of the galaxy's most dangerous empires. The coalition forces scattered, unable to mount a proper counterattack. The humans had proven that their strength wasn't just in numbers, it was in their will to fight. The galaxy was now facing a new kind of war. No longer were the Kar, Vath, and Drulgar the masters of the stars. Humanity had shattered the myth that they were weak and unprepared. The resistance was defeated, but the message had been sent: you cannot defeat us. The humans were not just a force to be reckoned with, they were the future. The remaining alien empires, once proud of their dominance, now began to question their own strength. Could they stand against the humans? Was it time to form new alliances, or would they be crushed under the weight of humanity's ambition? As the humans pushed forward, the galaxy braced itself for the war that was now inevitable. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity, a once-ignored species, was now rewriting the rules of war. After the disastrous defeat of the Kar, Vath, and Drulgar coalition, the remaining galactic powers began to rethink their strategies. No longer could they dismiss humanity as weak or insignificant. The humans had shown that their power wasn't just in their advanced ships or weapons. It was in their fierce determination to win at any cost. The galaxy's once proud empires now found themselves on the defensive. The most powerful of them, the Zalran coalition, knew that if they didn't act quickly, they would be next. Their fleets had barely survived the last encounter with humanity, and they had no intention of being caught off guard again. But even as the Zalran prepared for a counterattack, they realized something troubling. The humans weren't stopping. They weren't waiting for the Zalran to make the first move. Humanity had proven they were always one step ahead. The Zalran leaders gathered in secret, discussing how to defend their empire. They had resources, they had strength, but they had one weakness. They had underestimated humanity. Now the question was no longer about whether humanity could defeat them. It was about whether they could stop humanity from sweeping across the galaxy, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Meanwhile, the human fleet was growing bolder. With every victory, their confidence soared. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to dominate. As the humans moved closer to the heart of the Zalran coalition, their leaders made a crucial decision. It was time to strike again, but this time, they would strike at the very heart of the empire. The battle that followed was nothing like anything the galaxy had seen. The Zalran, desperate to regain control, brought out their most powerful warships. The human fleet, though smaller, was faster and more coordinated. The humans didn't wait for a long, drawn-out battle. They struck swiftly, catching the Zalran off guard once again. Their ships moved with precision, hitting the most vulnerable points in the Zalran defenses before the enemy could react. The Zalran fought back fiercely, but it was clear they were outmatched. The human fleet was relentless, showing no mercy. One by one, Zalran ships fell to the humans' firepower. The Zalran commanders watched in disbelief as their mighty fleet was torn apart. What had once been an unstoppable force was now crumbling before humanity's eyes. As the dust settled and the last of the Zalran ships retreated into the darkness of space, the humans stood victorious. The Zalran coalition, once the most powerful empire in the galaxy, was shattered. Their confidence had been their downfall. They had believed that no one could challenge them, but humanity had proved them wrong. The tide had turned. Humanity's strength was no longer in question. They had shown that they could face the might of the galaxy's greatest empires and come out on top. The galaxy's remaining powers now had a choice. They could join humanity, or they could be swept aside, like so many others before them. The message was clear. Humanity would not be stopped. The galaxy had underestimated them, but that mistake would never be made again. The galaxy was on edge. The humans, once a quiet and unknown species, had now destroyed two of the most powerful empires, leaving devastation in their wake. The Zalran had been defeated, and the Kar, Vath, and Drolgar had already retreated. One question now burned in the minds of the galaxy's remaining powers. What could stop the humans? For the first time in centuries, the most dominant force in the galaxy, the Ashtar Dominion, was facing the reality that their empire was not invincible. The Ashtar had seen the humans rise with growing concern, but they had waited, hoping the humans would eventually lose momentum. That hope had faded as the humans' victories piled up. Now, the Ashtar had no choice but to act. The Ashtar Dominion was led by the ruthless Emperor Varek, who had built an empire through fear and conquest. Their warships were unmatched in size and strength, and their military tactics were legendary. Yet, as the Ashtar gathered their fleet, there was a lingering fear among their generals. Could their power stand against humanity's relentless drive? Emperor Varek decided to make a final stand, sending his best ships and soldiers to meet humanity head-on. He knew that this would be the battle to determine the fate of the galaxy. If the Ashtar could crush the human fleet, they would prove to the rest of the galaxy that no one could defy their rule. But if the humans won, then the galaxy would be theirs for the taking. The battle was set to take place in the heart of the Ashtar-controlled sector, near the planet Casoria, a world that had long been under Ashtar rule. The humans, undeterred by the challenge ahead, moved their fleet into position. The Ashtar had been preparing for this moment for years, but they didn't know just how prepared the humans were. As the two fleets collided, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Ashtar ships were massive, towering over the human vessels in size and firepower. But the humans fought with an agility and speed that the Ashtar had not anticipated. They didn't try to match the Ashtar's strength. They used their speed, precision, and cunning to attack with pinpoint accuracy. Every move was calculated. Every strike aimed to exploit a weakness in the Ashtar defenses. The battle raged for hours, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Ashtar fleet, though powerful, struggled to keep up with the humans' tactics. The human ships darted in and out of the fight, striking fast before retreating to regroup. The Ashtar, with their larger ships and slower movements, couldn't react quickly enough. The humans had learned from every previous encounter, and now they were using that knowledge to dismantle the Ashtar fleet piece by piece. Despite their power, the Ashtar couldn't keep up with humanity's relentless attacks. One by one, their ships were destroyed, their defenses shattered. Emperor Varek watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet was slowly torn apart. He had never faced such an enemy. The humans had no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy. They were warriors in every sense of the word. By the end of the battle, the Ashtar fleet was in ruins. The humans had dealt a crushing blow to their greatest enemy. The Ashtar Dominion had made its last stand, and lost. Emperor Varek, now desperate, ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. The humans had proven that no empire, no matter how powerful, was safe from their might. The Ashtar had underestimated the humans, just like the Kar, the Vath, and the Drulgar. And now, the entire galaxy would know that humanity had arrived to stay. The war was far from over, but humanity had taken one more decisive step toward victory. The galaxy had learned a painful lesson. Underestimate humanity, and you would pay the price. The galaxy had been changed forever. The humans, once considered a primitive and insignificant species, had emerged as the galaxy's most powerful force. Their victories over the Kar, Zalrin, Vath, Drulgar, and even the mighty Ashtar Dominion had left the galaxy stunned. The once unshakable confidence of the old empires had been shattered. Now, as humanity's fleet advanced through the stars, all the galaxy could do was watch, uncertain of what would happen next. In the grand halls of the galaxy's remaining superpowers, there was fear. The alien races who had long ruled the galaxy could no longer deny the threat that humanity posed. The humans had proven time and time again that they were not just a rising power, they were a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. The long-standing order of the galaxy had begun to crumble, and no one knew how to stop it. The human fleet, now larger and more powerful than ever, continued its march toward the heart of galactic power. The remaining empires were scrambling, trying to form alliances, gather forces, and prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Earth. Some began to consider surrender, but pride kept many of them from making the first move. Meanwhile, humanity's leaders were clear about their goals. They'd wanted the galaxy, not just as allies, not just as partners, but as rulers. Earth had no interest in playing by the old rules. They weren't just seeking survival or defense, they were seeking dominance. And as they pushed forward, the galaxy's most powerful races were forced to reckon with the reality. The humans would not be satisfied with anything less than total victory. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human race watched as their military campaigns unfolded. They saw the fear they had inspired in the galaxy, but they also understood the gravity of their position. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. But the war was far from over. There were still races that stood in opposition, still powerful forces that would fight to the last to prevent humanity from taking control. But there was no turning back now. Humanity's message had already been sent across the galaxy. We are here to stay. Join us, or be destroyed. No one could ignore the weight of those words any longer. The question now was no longer if humanity would win. It was how they would reshape the galaxy once it was theirs. The galaxy itself seemed to shudder under the weight of this new reality. No longer were the great empires the center of power. Earth had risen from the ashes of isolation to take its place as the dominant force. The old power structures were crumbling, and a new era was about to begin. In the far reaches of space, the remaining empires began to reconsider their positions. Would they join the humans and adapt to this new order, or would they continue to resist and risk their destruction? There was no longer a clear path forward. Humanity had turned the galaxy upside down, and now every faction was forced to decide whether they would be part of the new world or crushed beneath it. As the human fleet approached the next galaxy, their banners flying proudly in the vast emptiness of space, one thing was certain. Humanity had proven they were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy, once unshakable in its belief that no species could challenge the old powers, now faced the truth. The age of the humans had begun. The galaxy, now on the brink of change, stood at a crossroads. Humanity had shattered the old power structures, and the once mighty empires were struggling to hold on to their influence. The message was clear. Earth had risen from obscurity to take its place at the top, and no one could ignore it. However, the true power of humanity lay not just in their military might, but in their ability to unite the galaxy under a common cause. As humanity advanced, they didn't just focus on winning battles, they focused on forging alliances. Earth's leaders knew that a divided galaxy would never stand against them, But a united one could bring about peace, prosperity, and a new era of cooperation. It wasn't enough to just conquer. Humanity aimed to lead with strength, but also with wisdom. They understood that the galaxy's future depended on trust, unity, and mutual respect. The first step was to reach out to the alien races that had once seen humanity as an enemy. The Kar, the Vath, the Drolgar, and the Zalrin. All of them were battered and beaten, but they were not broken. Humanity's leaders extended an olive branch to these former enemies. Instead of demanding total submission, they offered a chance for these races to join a new coalition, one built not on fear and domination, but on shared goals and mutual benefit. At first, the response was met with suspicion. The Kar, who had suffered so much at humanity's hands, could not immediately trust this new vision. The Vath and Drolgar, having lost their pride in battle, struggled to accept that their role in the galaxy had changed so drastically. But humanity's leaders persisted. They didn't just talk about peace, they demonstrated it. Humanity offered technological support, resources to rebuild devastated worlds, and most importantly, they promised equality. The new galactic order wouldn't be led by force or fear. It would be led by those willing to work together for the greater good. Slowly, the first steps of cooperation were taken. The leaders of the alien races, once so proud and independent, began to see the wisdom in humanity's approach. The galaxy could either remain divided, constantly at war with itself, or it could come together, with Earth at its center, to create a future of shared prosperity. The idea of unity wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a reality that humanity was working to bring to life. Even the once reluctant Zalrin, their empire in ruins, began to see the benefits of joining this new order. The promise of a seat at the table, of equality with other races, was something they hadn't dared to hope for. Slowly, the tides began to shift. The resistance that had once been a powerful force against humanity's rise started to crumble as more and more races saw the potential for a better future. By the time humanity's fleet reached the next galaxy, something had changed in the hearts and minds of the galaxy's leaders. They had seen humanity's strength, but they had also seen their compassion, their willingness to build rather than destroy. The power of unity had become humanity's greatest weapon, and it was working. The old empires, still struggling with their pride, now had a choice. They could continue to resist, fighting against the inevitable, or they could join humanity and work together for a better future. The galaxy's fate was no longer uncertain. It was in the hands of those who were willing to embrace change. Humanity had not just conquered, they had inspired. And in doing so, they had brought the galaxy closer together than ever before. The galaxy had been transformed. What was once a chaotic battlefield, filled with distrust and war, was slowly beginning to find its path toward peace. Humanity had not just conquered the stars, they had reshaped the very fabric of galactic politics. Where once they had been seen as weak and insignificant, humans were now viewed as a force for unity, progress, and strength. Their victory over the greatest empires of the galaxy was not the end. It was the beginning of a new era. As the galaxy moved into this new era, humanity took on the responsibility of leadership, but they didn't lead with fear or domination. Instead, they led with respect, determination, and a deep understanding of what it meant to build a future for everyone. Humanity's vision was clear, a united galaxy where no race was left behind, and no empire ruled alone. The leaders of the once powerful empires, the Kar, the Zalrin, and the Vath, had all been invited to join a new council that would govern the galaxy. It was not a council where one race ruled over another. Instead, it was a council based on equality, where every voice would be heard and every race would have a seat at the table. The humans had created something new, a true intergalactic government that wasn't based on fear or conquest, but on cooperation. At first, some of the alien leaders were hesitant. For centuries, they had been taught to distrust the humans. They had seen Earth as a backward, insignificant planet, and now they were being asked to share power with them. But as they sat in meetings and listened to the humans, they began to understand. Humanity's vision wasn't just about their own rise. It was about creating a future where everyone had a chance to thrive. The once proud Kar, who had thought themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy, now worked alongside the humans to rebuild their shattered empire. The Zalran, their strength broken in battle, found new hope in the human-led coalition, where they were not just subjects, but partners. And the Vath, a race once known for their ruthlessness, now saw the potential for true peace and prosperity. But the greatest change came from the people. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been torn apart by centuries of war now began to rebuild. The humans didn't just provide military strength, they provided something even more valuable: hope. They had shown the galaxy that it was possible to overcome the divisions of the past and work together for a better future. Humanity's legacy was not just in their military victories, but in the way they had brought the galaxy together. They had taken a galaxy divided by war and transformed it into a galaxy united by hope. Earth had not just become a power among the stars. They had become a beacon of what could be achieved when races worked together for a common goal. The galaxy was no longer a place of endless conflict. It was a place of collaboration, understanding, and growth. And as humanity looked to the future, they knew that their work had just begun. The galaxy, once on the brink of collapse, was now on the path to something greater. And humanity, standing at the center, would continue to lead the way. The stars seemed brighter than ever. The galaxy, once torn apart by endless wars, had found a new direction. Thanks to humanity's vision, a new era had dawned, one filled with unity, hope, and a shared commitment to rebuilding what had been lost. The humans had not only survived the impossible odds, they had conquered them, but their true victory lay in what they had achieved afterward. Under the leadership of Earth, the galaxy was no longer a fractured collection of warring empires. It had become a place of cooperation. The once feared military powers, the Kar, the Zalran, the Drolgar, and the others, now sat side by side with humanity in the new Galactic Council. Gone were the days of conflict and division. The old ways had been replaced by something better, a shared future where every race had a voice, where every world had a chance to prosper. On Earth, celebrations erupted as the news spread across the galaxy. The human people were proud, not just of their military strength, but of what they had achieved as a society. They had proved that their unity was more powerful than any weapon. They had proven that the strength of a people wasn't measured by how many battles they won, but by how many lives they improved. But for the galaxy's leaders, there was no time to rest. The Council was still in its early days, and there was much to be done. The scars of war still marked many worlds. Whole civilizations had been destroyed, and rebuilding would take time. However, the promise of peace and unity, something that had once seemed impossible, was now a reality. Humanity's ability to work with other races, to help and guide, had made all the difference. They didn't just bring weapons to the fight. They brought ideas, compassion, and solutions. The first step was rebuilding the devastated planets, and humanity led the way, sending resources, technology, and experts to help restore order. Alien races that had once been enemies now worked side by side, bringing new technologies to share and new ways of living to explore. The humans had sparked a chain reaction across the galaxy. Everyone was now working toward the same goal. There were no longer any barriers of race, species, or empire. As time passed, the galaxy began to heal. The scars of the old wars faded, and new opportunities arose. The former leaders of the galaxy, once powerful and unchallenged, now looked to humanity for guidance. They had learned the most important lesson of all. Strength wasn't just about dominating others. It was about coming together, respecting each other, and working as one. Humanity's journey had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, and there was much left to explore. The stars still held countless mysteries, and there were many new frontiers to be discovered. But now, the humans weren't alone. They had allies, they had partners, And most importantly, they had the trust of the galaxy. The new dawn had arrived, and with it came the promise of a future brighter than anyone had ever dared to dream. The galaxy, united in peace and strength, would never again fall into the darkness of war. It would stand together as one.